All right, guys. How's everybody doing tonight?
We're good.
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 If there's any technical difficulties, if you see anything slowing down, or if you can't hear me, just let me know. This is my first go-to-meeting as a presenter on an iPad, so we'll see how that goes tonight. But Mike, thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me tonight. Congratulations on everything that's happening. And for those of you that don't know me or do know me, again, kind of reiterate. I do work with a lot of startup entrepreneurs per year. I've been doing it for a long time. I run a company called Redwood Agile, and our specialty is kind of building products and helping entrepreneurs at an idea stage build it all the way through MVP and then launch it to market. We also develop our own products at Redwood. That's really kind of our prime bread and butter. We've created our own startup accelerator, which is a team-driven startup accelerator, so a little different than Founders Institute, where as a single entrepreneur you can come in and really build skills as an entrepreneur. Sprout is really more focused about the team effort and how to work as an independent unit, as a team together on various tasks, from product development to team development to fundraising to customer development, obviously launch and growth and optimization. So quick update on Sprout Camp, Michael, since you asked. Sprout Camp's going actually really well. We have just recently licensed the model. We brought on a venture capital firm to allow us to bring Sprout Camp to 6 new cities in the southeast of the United States. We will be firing up our Tampa Bay location for our first full program this fall. And it's going to be for 6 companies per session, and probably we're going to keep that at 6 companies per year for now. And what that's really going to mean is for companies that qualify and get into the program, we're going to do about a 4-month acceleration program, and then after that, we're going to make an investment of anywhere between $500,000 up to $2 million, depending on the type of company you are, what your requirements are. And then we're going to continue to incubate our partnership network. So between expert software developers and design firms like Redwood Agile, some of our partners up in Jacksonville and the East Coast and the West Coast will continue to help you incubate and bring your product through growth strategy. And that'll be in conjunction with the venture firm that actually makes the investment. So those are some of the changes that have been going on with Sprout Camp. It's all been going really well. We're obviously very busy right now trying to launch Sprout Camp to 6 new locations in the first year. We're focused on our first 3 locations this year, which is going to be Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, and Asheville, North Carolina. So the exciting news is we're going to have some press releases here in the next few weeks, probably right around the startup weekend time, about what's happening with Sprout Camp. And in the meantime, for the last, I'd say, 2.5 months, we've been piloting 2 new incubated companies that have gone through kind of the full Sprout Camp process. One of them has already raised some funds, and the other one is in the process of becoming fundable. And obviously, if we do our job, that's going to happen here in the next month and a half or 2 months. So that's what we've been up to. And again, as Mike mentioned, I've been building teams for a long time, everywhere from my own startup companies to startups that I've joined either in an earlier or late stage, as well as a lot of big companies. I've been kind of a startup and corporate consultant for a long time, and one of my fortes is how to pick people and how to build teams that really meet the objectives of whatever the organization is trying to get out of that team. So what we're going to talk about tonight is some of the 2 most important parts of the team aspect, especially in a startup, which is a very vulnerable type of environment, and that's really the hiring of those key founders and the firing of any key founders and what that process looks like. And tonight I get to come to you with a very recent example, fresh off kind of the presses of having to go through the process of hiring and firing a co-founder and what it meant for the business and how we're able to move forward really at lightning speed and warp speed when some very tough decisions were made. But again, thinking about the more global context of what our objectives are as a company, sometimes it's the hardest decision, but it's really the best decision you can make. So before I get started, I'll mention a couple of things. I'm going to try to run through a couple of tidbits of information. I'm going to do some screen sharing, and I'm going to do kind of some presenter style, lecture style, and kind of laying out some information. And then I'm going to wrap some things up after each section and kind of have some Q&A. So about 3 or 4 times between now and I'm done talking, I'll have a short Q&A session so we can kind of ask questions and get some answers. In the meantime, if you guys wouldn't mind muting just so we don't have too much interference. So before I get going, I just want to thank all of you for being here. I know a few of you, David and Jeff and Derek, Jeremy and Sushi and Bobby. Nice to meet you if I haven't already met you, although Bobby, your name looks really familiar. Before I get started, any questions, any comments, or can anybody not hear me? All right, I'll take no news as good news. I am going to, for a moment here, I'm going to start getting my screen share up. While I do that, I'll give you a quick segue into what it means to build a team. So building an amazing startup team is probably the hardest and most important part of growing your startup. It's something that's going to be with you for years and years to come. The average life cycle or lifespan of a new company in startup phase is 7 years. And so if you're able to make it from startup to actual scalable business, you're looking at about a 5 to 7 year cliff that you're going to have to be married to these people day in and day out. So whether you subscribe to kind of the 4-hour work week mentality of trying to automate as much as possible, especially with that human interaction, then most of us are actually going to have a lot of interaction with our co-founders because they're going to play a pivotal role in our company that we really don't fill. Too often, I think a lot of us entrepreneurs get lazy. A lot of us hire friends or people that we know, especially when we have a really good idea, we want to vet it through. We find somebody, we cling to them, and we say, hey, you want to do this together? And then we start going. And what happens about a year, maybe 2 years down the road, the complexities really start to fall out, whether they're management issues, whether they're skill-related issues, or whether it's really related to funding and money, to where differences of personality, skill sets, and management styles are going to start coming out. As co-founders of your company, one of your #1 goals besides finding product market fit is going to be setting the tone and the culture of your organization. Some people want to grow larger organizations where you're going to employ maybe 20, 50, 100 people. Some are going to grow even farther over the next 10 years and maybe employ thousands of people. So your job right now for the foreseeable future until you really let go of the organization is to set the tone of that culture. So finding someone that meshes with who you are and has the same principles that you do and can really share some of the same mindset but really come at it from a different skill set perspective is a very tough job. Finding and especially hiring a rock star is even harder because once you find them and you really want them on your team, the way to woo them into your team might be a lot harder than you thought. But if you put kind of the right process in place and you understand exactly who you're looking for, you will attract the right people and you won't have to go through some of those difficult challenges in the beginning. And one of the really important things is knowing what questions to ask. And that'll help you make, obviously, the right decision. So kind of as we get started, I'm going to try to do the screen share button here real quick. So excuse my hand in your face. Oh, okay. So it's not going to share.
I made you the presenter. So I made you the presenter. You should, hold on a sec.
No, I see it here. It's making me enter the web address into a built-in browser instead of the Google browser I already had up. So just one second, I'm going to wait for this to load. So before I get started, is anybody familiar with the Startup Genome Report?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Quick introduction. The Startup Genome Report, or project really, was built to increase the success rate of startups and accelerate the pace of innovation around the world by turning entrepreneurship into a science. Very much like Pandora went on the largest project, the Music Genome Project, to really looking at a lot of metadata related to music and how it all relates to your style, to your preferences. The Startup Genome Report is very similar to where it collects a lot of data and it runs a lot of algorithms to really find very specific pieces of information that you can use scientifically to drive success for your company. And what it does, it also categorizes types of entrepreneurs and types of startup companies and really gives some good metrics about historical performance of those types of companies and the types of founders that are helping those categories of companies be successful. So I'm going to read a couple of summary pieces of information real quick that are relevant, obviously, to starting a company with someone else. All right, so solo founders take 3.6 times longer to reach scale stage compared to a founding team of 2, and they are 2.3 times less likely to pivot. And if you want to look at a pivot fact, startups that pivot once or twice one or two times, raise 2.5 times more money, have 3.6 times better user growth, and are 52% less likely to scale prematurely than startups that pivot more than 2 times. So the value of a pivot can be one of the most valuable things that you do, and a lot of times it's going to hinge on the team that you've put together, whether they're going to allow you to pivot or whether they're going to help you pivot in the right direction to be more successful. Business-heavy founding teams are 6.2 times more likely to successfully scale with sales-driven startups than with product-centric startups. A lot of business-savvy people with MBAs and a lot of sales background really understand that sales process and can integrate it into the overall architecture of that organization is going to scale. Product-based startups really don't need that many business-heavy team members. They can really rely on their product user or their product savviness and really their design and experience savviness to push through the product, which is much different than the sales-driven startup. Technically heavy founding teams are 3.3 times more likely to successfully scale with product-centric startups with no network effects than with product-centric startups that have network effects. And balanced teams with one technical co-founder, one business founder raise 30% more money, have almost 3 times more user growth, and are almost 20% less likely to scale prematurely than technical or business-heavy founding teams. And most founders are driven by impact rather than experience or money. All right, so a couple of facts that kind of pop out to me are the fact that a well-balanced team raises the chances of success the majority of the time, whether it's building fundability, it's building your scalability strategy, it's building your product-centric strategy. A good balanced team of technical, business, product, and marketing specialists are going to help your company form the right processes, the right messaging, the right communication, and the right tone and culture to be more successful than teams that really aren't that well balanced. I have a recent story of building a team that was too business heavy. We had too many people that, were sales driven, and it was our business heavy founding team members were really trying to drive towards a sales driven organization. We really were built and primed to be a scalable product centric startup. So we actually had to do some restructuring, some shifting to release some of the business heavier founders and actually replace them with more product level managers that understand the product model, the messaging that goes along with it, and really that very different scalability model. So before I kind of go into some other areas about co-founders and how we find those co-founders, and then how we profile them and how we start dating them, and then how we commit to them, anybody have any questions about this data that was just thrown out?
Hey, how do you, this is Sushi. How do you get access to that startup genome report? Because I've heard about it before, but I don't have access to it.
Sure. What I can do is after this session, I'm going to send Michael some materials, and he can send that out to the entire group. And with that, I'll make sure I include the 2012 Startup Genome Report. It's also available at, I forget the web address, but I'll make sure Michael has all of that information so you guys can also go out and take your own Startup Genome benchmark report. And that benchmark report is something I'll talk about a little bit later, which really helps profile your organization based on its founders and based on its business model.
Yeah, let me address that also a little more specifically, Sushi. So it's free of charge. Leaves is in there. When I started Leaves about 18 months ago, I signed up for it. And so I will pre-warn you, it's data intensive, which means you've got to give it a lot of data in order for you to get back the metrics that Joel's talking about and the reports and the kind of startup you are. So you've got to feed it. It doesn't just know about you, right? So it's a workload to input all of the variables that are driving your startup and where you're going and what you're thinking and who's on the team. And I did it for a while, and then I couldn't do it anymore because it's really time intensive. So I'll just pre-warn you. It is free. It's a startup genome, G-N-O-M-E, I think it is. You can Google it. You can sign up, and they'll put you through a battery of tests and ask you tons of questions. But it is valuable, but it's only as valuable as your propensity to want to feed it with data. And Joel, if I'll distribute that stuff if you send it to me. And if your PowerPoint's up on your screen, we should be able to see your screen.
Yeah, I just realized I didn't push the tap to share your screen part yet.
There you go. All right, back to you, Joel.
All right, so can you guys see my screen now instead of my face?
We see both.
We see both.
How about now?
Just the screen.
Oh. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, this is the report, the part of the report that I was reading, and it kind of, segue into what Michael was saying. The actual benchmark report that drives the overall global report, called the Startup Genome Report, is issued by a company called Startup Compass. You can actually visit them at startupcompass.to, and that's where you would actually take the benchmark test. That is something that a lot of accelerators are starting to use. SproutCamp has been using it since the beginning. And to Michael's point, it's very data intensive, and it's a very hard analytical look at making very good decisions about your startup and then driving towards the cohort metrics that are very important to your business model. If anybody's read The Lean Startup, cohort metrics is one of the 5 principles of a really good, strong startup, is understanding your innovation accounting, your cohort metrics, and what you drive your organization to. The Startup Compass looks at the most common types of cohort metrics, and it then provides you a report based on your data input of what type of organization you are, what your cohort metrics are. It'll give a risk indicator, so we use it for our investor portal to calculate risk based on the business model and the team. So it's very valuable for an accelerator, but it's also something that we have to help each one of our startup entrepreneurs walk through to ensure that, A, they're not scared of a lot of the data, because it can be a lot all at once to fill out. It usually takes, I think, 20 or 30 minutes to fill out each benchmark. And we do that monthly with each one of our startups just to keep them on track and give them a very good, clear, visible view of where their cohort metrics are located at that moment in time. And it kind of can look, you can start to benchmark your milestones, or whether or not you're hitting them or you're failing at hitting your milestones that you agreed to. So any really good, strong, I think, investment-based incubator is going to drive towards some amount of analytics. And the benchmark report is one of the tools that we use to drive all of our startups towards their milestones. And of course, we provide that as due diligence to all our investors. Any more questions? Thank you again for that, Michael. All right, well, I'm going to move away from this real quick. I kind of wanted to lay a foundation for how important a very well-balanced team is going to be, especially if a lot of you are starting product-centric companies, that might be an online software platform that has a membership-based business, revenue model in place. You're going to be a product. You really want to pick the right metrics to drive your organization to, and of course, even before that, you want to pick the right co-founder that can really help you drive to those metrics. All right, so the next kind of tidbit of I'd say, industry expertise that some of us use when we're building teams for entrepreneurs is something called the Bossy DNA profile. Is anybody here not familiar with the Bossy DNA profile?
I'm not.
I'm not.
All right, so here is where, like it says on the screen, you're going to gain eye-opening insight into yourself, the people surrounding you, and the strategies and solutions that are best suited for you. There's been a lot of research that dates back all the way to people like Carl Jung and kind of the color wheel of personality and psychoanalysis that really drives into the DNA of your personality, your emotional intelligence, as well as kind of your overall IQ. The Bossy profile is something very unique, where it takes some of the same type of paradigm and approach and applies it to your professional profile, and especially within the context of building a team. There is an acronym. Bossy is actually an acronym. Stands for Builder, Optimize. We'll get to that in a second. Anyways, Builder, Opportunist, Specialist, or Innovator are the 4 different types of DNAs, and the Bossy profile actually will profile you. And what you don't want to do usually is you don't want to find a like-for-like person that you're going to start a team with. That's when you start to getting into an unbalanced team. So when you find a business-heavy, or a technical-heavy team, you might find that their innovator or their specialist profile are going to be matching very closely to the other co-founder. So released after about 3 years of research with over 1,000 entrepreneurs participating, Bossy is a framework that segments individuals based on their entrepreneurial DNA. We believe there's an entrepreneur inside everyone. Discovering whether builder, opportunist, specialist, or innovator DNA is driving you and your team will unlock tremendous insight that can be used to design and deploy strategy best suited for you. So obviously now they're trying to get you to start. So I'm not going to read that line. Any questions so far about Bossy? Cool. I would say for the last year and a half, the Bossy profile has been an integral part of every team that I've helped build. Even with my own team and in one of my companies, we used the Bossy profile after we had already been co-founders and found out some very interesting things about ourselves and how we had to kind of formulate some processes around our like-for-likenesses and some of our differences. So it was extremely valuable for us as a team to go through and take a Bossy profile and go through the discussion and the exploration of finding out how we're different and how we can use that as a strategy to be more successful by taking that information and really using it for the best of our ability. I'm going to move directly from the Bossy profile, which is something that you can do on your own. You can do it at the website that you see there on the screen. But I'm going to start doing a plug now because, as Michael mentioned, I'm pretty involved with a company called Co-Founders Lab. They're out of Maryland. And they operate all over the world. They have, I believe, 36 primary cities in the United States right now. And not only their software, but also their community outreach program is really there to drive entrepreneurs to build better teams. So it's sort of like matchmaking for entrepreneurs. About a year ago, the Bossy organization and Co-Founders Lab struck a relationship, and Co-Founders integrated the Bossy profile framework into their matching technology. So now as you build a profile in this in Co-Founders Lab and you take your Bossy profile, you can now show in your profile to other entrepreneurs that are looking, let's say, for a builder, and you're a builder, they can actually match you by your Bossy profile. So not only does it allow you to integrate kind of that self-awareness, it also allows you to start matching who you're looking for by asking the right questions. I'm a builder. I'm actually looking for an innovator, somebody who can innovate on a technology sitting in a university somewhere, and I'm going to help them build it. So right off the bat, the Bossy profile arms us with very specific information that is so basic that we can make even better decisions on who we're hiring or who we're bringing into our co-founding team. So without further ado, I'm actually going to give you a quick run through and a demo. I've developed a relationship with Co-Founders Lab for about a year now. Over the year, I've seen a lot of changes, and I've seen, I think, a lot of challenges that they've had. And I'm happy to say that I really like where they're going. They have a network of over 10,000 entrepreneurs now. They have countless matches that have gone on within their platform as well as in their Co-Founders Wanted meetup groups that they do all over the world. And since they integrated the Bossy profile, that's when matches started happening online. And that's a pretty interesting fact in its own. Their first successful match was actually done in an accelerator, and I believe it was Techstars. That was their first successful match on record. After they integrated the Bossy profile, people started getting a depth of information about other people that was completely relevant to who they were trying to find as a teammate, versus just looking at hard skills like I am a developer looking for a designer, or I am a marketer looking for a business developer. You might not find the right business developer if that person isn't matching the Bossy profile that you're looking for on your team. So as that co-founder or as that founding member of your organization, it's very important to arm yourself with as much information as possible about who you're bringing into your team. So can everybody see the screen on their computer right now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. As you can see, MobiPlug is actually one of their leading companies, their case studies. That was one of the first companies. That was the first company matched. They raised $2.6 million, and they came out of Techstars in Boulder. So that's one example of what Co-Founders Lab can help you accomplish. Even if you're finding someone from across the country to join your team, virtual teams can be just as successful as physical teams. The way Co-Founders Lab works is it'll look at your location. As you can see here, I'm looking at Orlando, Florida within 150 miles. Now that did it automatically just by hitting their website. If I logged in, it actually gets even more specific. It'll start showing people that are within my network. I'm going to try to find somebody that has a Bossy profile filled out. Hey, is anybody on this phone call, does anybody on this phone call have a profile in Co-Founders Lab?
I do. This is Sushi.
All right, so we're going to look at you, Sushi.
First name is Hoang. We met actually at the first Co-Founders Lab here in Tampa.
Okay. If I saw your face, I'd probably recognize you.
I think John Montalone does too, and he met his current co-founder there at the Co-Founders Lab.
All right, well, because this is a custom browser, I have to log in real quick because it's not doing it automatically. Ugh. All right, I think that will work. All right, so right within the Co-Founders Lab profile, I can set my location. I can say I'm a business developer and I'm looking for a business developer currently. I'm in the internet business. I'm between the ages of 25 to 35. I can kind of set some of my profile information about who I am and what I'm looking for. And I'm seeking someone to join me right now. My experience level in finance, managing people, marketing, product management, sales, and technical. And I'm looking for somebody with the same type of skills, and then you can kind of star or give it a rating of the level of someone you're looking for. And you can look for, I'm looking for someone with a time commitment of 30 hours per week that can offer an equal investment as my co-founder between $5,000 and $10,000, and that has lots of connections. The business stage that my company is in that I'm looking for is I have paying customers. So you can kind of everything from I have an idea to business plan drafted to prototype, product tested to paying customers. And then I can add some additional information about experience, some skill sets, any colleges or universities, any certifications, and any accelerators and incubators. So it really allows you to manage your entrepreneurial co-founding profile pretty easily. It also allows me to add events either that I've been to, I'm mentoring, or I'm setting up, or I'm attending. I can add a video. I chose to add a video that I love to show with new entrepreneurs called Entrepreneurs Breakdowns and Breakthroughs. If you haven't heard of it, check it out on YouTube. And then it shows my Bossy archetype, and that's where my Bossy profile comes in. And then I can kind of add some of my social links, my profile completion, and how to contact me. So I've added my Skype there. All right, so my archetype, as I filled it out here, is a builder and an opportunist, which I think right now, at least in my trajectory, is pretty accurate right now. I'm doing a lot of building, and I'm definitely an opportunist. I'm always looking for a new opportunity. And like Michael said earlier, he's sort of obsessed and addicted to being a startup junkie. I'm sort of the same way. So I'm always out there looking for opportunity, which luckily is part of my job. So I can see two gray areas right off the gate. That if I'm going to go find one co-founder, it looks like I need to find somebody that's an innovator and somebody that is a S. I totally forget what S is right now. First one to tell me what S means gets a high five.
Specialist.
There you go, specialist. Thank you. Kept thinking of the word strategy. High five. Virtual high five. All right, so has anybody, Sushi, you said that you've used this, so I'm actually going to look for you. So any questions so far about this? Okay. And quick plug for Founders Institute. Founders Institute is a preferred partner of Co-Founders Lab. I don't exactly know what they're doing today, but I know that they've launched a Co-Founders, or in the middle of launching a Founders Institute white label version of Co-Founders Lab to do matchmaking during the Founders Institute process. Founders Institute finds this tool extremely useful in trying to match the co-founders that are in the program and, of course, that are out in the community overall. It's gaining a lot of traction. Everybody from Harvard University to Techstars to the Founders Institute to Sprout Camp to many other organizations are using and white labeling Co-Founders Lab to provide their community of entrepreneurs a much more effective way to build their teams, which is so, so important. One of the cornerstones of Co-Founders Lab and why their founders started this company was really one of the biggest and first challenges you're going to have as an entrepreneur, besides learning how to do it, is really finding who you're going to be doing it with. Many people really aren't cut out to doing it by themselves, and if they are, they've probably read Tim Ferriss's book many times, they understand it, and they're okay being a single founder, and they know how to pick their business model so they're not going to need another co-founder. The rest of us have to find a co-founder and really build a very unique marriage or a partnership with someone else that we're going to build an economic relationship as well as a very personal relationship with over the coming years. So before I go out and find you, Soshi, I'm going to pick on the compatibility report, which is on my profile. So this is where you can actually explore a little bit more information about your profile, your Bossy profile that you fill out. So let's look at the builder first. Predisposed strengths, strategic planning and problem solving, designing systems for scalable growth, recruiting investors, partners, employees, and customers. Built-in weaknesses, being patient with employees and their mistakes, keeping top manager loyal for the long term, and turning off your business mind, which is your work-life balance. Opportunist is the part of you that is optimistic, open-minded, and success-focused. The higher this DNA is in you, the more your desire to get rich as fast as possible. The key weaknesses of this DNA is that it drives impulsive decision-making and tends to get distracted by new money-making opportunities. And I'll stop there. It's pretty amazing how accurate that can be. Now, it's not accurate every day of my life, but in general, that can be pretty accurate profile of how I am in the entrepreneurial setting. So common traits for those who share my DNA: a desire to juggle multiple ventures and income opportunities, a strong aptitude for business development and sales in multi-million to multi-billion-dollar business size. Red lights to watch out if: high turnover salespeople, following the I'll do it myself approach and fixing the problems, fractured or strained relationships with close friends and family. Green lights, as you spend a majority of your time, or I spend a majority of my time overseeing business development activities for the company. You have a marketing advisory with innovator DNA helping you create breakthrough lead generation strategy, and you are the face voice of your company to staff, investors, and customers. So now at the bottom, right in my profile, I see top recommendations from Bossy. So I'm going to click on it, and this comes directly from the Bossy toolbox that has been integrated. And there's a whole bunch more information that I can now take use of based on my Bossy profile. So already I can say with value that this has helped me find a co-founder. I've been looking for a business developer for quite some time to help me grow one of my businesses. I actually helped find somebody through Co-Founders Lab. It was actually through Co-Founders Lab. He is now a part of my co-founding team for Sprout Camp. And when we did the Bossy profile, it was very amazing how he met the gray areas that I was looking for, and I met the red areas that I had. So it truly was a match made in heaven. One of these days we'll write a story about it. All right, so any questions right now about how easy it is to build an entrepreneurial profile? And if you're looking for a co-founder, this is an excellent way to start. And the next step is to take this profile to a real meeting, to a real personal relationship, and start building that co-founder dating relationship with someone new. So anybody, any questions? Okay. I am going to search for you, Sushi.
Hey, Joel, while you're doing that, let me ask you a question. Are you looking just for someone that is a co-founder, or could you also look at a C-level, look for a C-level person that would fit the criteria or the area that you're looking, in a certain particular position or profile? That might not be a co-founder, but maybe it could be a C-level vice president of sales or something like that. Could this be used as that as well?
Absolutely. It's a very good question, too. One thing that we don't allow in the system, and this is pretty heavily monitored, is we don't allow service providers to troll through and try to find employees or to try to sell services to other founding teams. But other than that, this is an unbelievable resource to try to find that kind of founding level, let's say executive or VP. It's a little different than obviously going to a job search because the majority of Co-Founders Lab people that are in this network are looking for kind of founding level status. That means a newer company, even if they are making money with the product, they're probably maybe a year or two old, and they're not hiring a C-level executive of a 5 or 10-year-old company. I'd say that's better suited probably for a staffing firm or a headhunter that can really find that seasoned executive. A lot of the people that are in Co-Founders Lab have very, very good experience. Some of them are definitely executive level, but they may be looking for a new company to be involved in. So if you're still a startup and you're looking for like a C-level founding employee, and they're not going to be a co-founder, they're not your number 2 or your number 3 person, but they might be your 4th or 5th or 6th hire, Co-Founders Lab is an excellent resource to look for. Good question, Bobby. Anybody else?
Hey, this is Jeremy. Just if you guys do find a good partner, do they help you navigate through, and we just went through this last week about the documentation or the legal contracts that you have with this new partner? Do they do anything around that?
That's another great question, Jeremy. Co-Founders Lab does not specifically do that. What they do is they rely on local ambassadors like myself in those specific areas to help mentor teams and provide the right type of guidance and documentation. So for example, anybody that comes and asks either Co-Founders Lab directly, they'll get in touch with me and ask me to kind of mentor that relationship and provide some good guidance and documentation. And we have a very set standard, it's called a collaborator agreement. And that's really the first document that 2 co-founders that are dating are going to sign together. And it's not an operating agreement, and it's not a legally binding document. But what it does is it forces the founders really to think about the split of equity, responsibility, and kind of who's going to be doing what in the organization. It's a great starter document. From there, I would definitely suggest either getting a mentor to continue on that process, and of course an attorney that can help you really get the operating agreement, get the legal structure down, and make sure, of course, that all the percentages of equity and ownership are taken care of. Your attorney is going to be able to help the rest of that work out for you.
Thank you. And is there anything in it for Co-Founders Lab? How do they make their money?
So good question. Part of Co-Founders Lab revenue strategy was just turned on last month, and it's called Go Pro. The Pro membership allows additional information, additional access to membership options that normal profiles don't receive. And you, of course, pay per month for this additional membership. The biggest resource or the biggest benefit of paying for a Pro is getting access to the resources section, which we can go over here in a few minutes. So to answer your example about idea stage founders that are, let's say, dating, they found themselves, but now they need some help with some documentation and some mentoring, the resources section is still an option as a Co-Founders Lab member to find a resource that is local to your area. You fill out a simple form on their website, and they'll contact someone, a partner that they have in that area, that specializes, let's say, in legal documents between founders. As an example, when you get to the point where you're building an MVP and you found your team, you've matched yourself in Co-Founders Lab, and you have a GoPro membership, if you go visit the resources section, you'll find a resource in there for helping you build your MVP. What Co-Founders Lab will do is turn around and find the best partner to build that MVP, and they'll hand you off, and then, of course, it's up to you and that partner to develop a relationship. So Co-Founders still does the matchmaking, but they don't actually do the work. So the way they're making their money right now is through their professional memberships. And they also get a revenue share from the majority of their partners that are offering services through the resources section. Full disclosure, we are an exclusive partner in several sections on the resource section.
Thank you.
Joel, my first name is Hoang.
Oh, I can only see your last name, Hong. That's why I didn't recognize you.
There it is, second one.
Well, that's awesome, because I think I know all of you now. All right, so here is your profile, and I see that you haven't taken the assessment. So I'm going to request right there from one button that you take the assessment. I really like your profile. You're really what I'm looking for, I think, but I want to see your archetype. I really want to see what your profile says about you and if it's a match for what I'm looking for. So really the really cool part about the way this platform is coming together is how easy it is to really find a qualified co-founder. Before this platform came, I used to do a lot of hiring on websites like Startuppers and StartApply and general just job websites as well as headhunters to find co-founders. And it was extremely time intensive and it was expensive. You know, a lot of times you pay $250 just to post something. And by the time you find somebody, you probably spent maybe $1,000 to $5,000 just finding the person that's going to be on your team. And really nothing gives me as much information as this platform has done. So I just, I want to plug them as much as possible because they still have a long ways to go, but I think they're doing a really great job. All right, so I can see you've got a prototype built, and you've got 5 to 10 years in education and training. Your skills are UX, analytics, competitive strategy, programming, databases, and SQL and .NET. I can see where you went to school. I can see the events that you've attended or do attend. And again, if you had your profile here, I could easily switch over. I can look at your profile, and I can gain some valuable insight into who you are as an entrepreneur, what your entrepreneurial DNA is. And then at that point, I can make a very easy determination within 30 seconds to a minute of whether or not we're going to be a good match right off the bat. Now I'm going to send you a message, which I can do, again, right from the screen. And that's going to go to your inbox within Co-Founders Lab, the system, which should also send you an email to notify you that you have a new message. I'm going to add you to my favorites by clicking that button. And I'm going to assume that it's added you. Okay. And then I can actually share some information about you right from your profile. And of course I can see where you are, at least based on how you filled out your profile. You're over there by channel side. All right, so now I found an entrepreneur who's in Tampa Bay. He's a designer. He's got industry knowledge of the education and training. You're looking for sweat equity only and 30 hours per week. I've got 30 hours a week. I love sweat equity and I have lots of connections. I see you have a prototype, and I can definitely help you get from prototype to product tested and all the way to paying customers. So again, based on your Bossy profile, I probably would want to talk to you at this point. The next step, after something as simple as this that I would do, is I would look for an in-person meeting. And Co-Founders Lab does a quarterly meeting called Co-Founders Wanted. And that is for two purposes. The first purpose is to invite new people that have no idea what Co-Founders Lab is and really need a good introduction into matchmaking for entrepreneurs. The second reason are for people that have already, let's say, connected within the system. It's a great, safe way to come and get a facilitated session from myself or whoever's actually running that program and one of the mentors that will be there to kind of help answer some basic questions and maybe to whip out a collaborator's document or send you an email and really help that co-founder dating process feel safe, secure, and kind of some accountability built into it. So instead of going out and doing it on your own, it might be safer just, I'm going to go to the next Co-Founders Wanted meeting. It's in the middle of June. I found a few people I liked. I sent them messages. They're going to show up, and we're going to meet at the meetup, and we're going to see if we like each other. Our bossy profiles all matched up. I really like their background, and we're going to get together at the meeting, and we're going to spend some time talking, and also we're going to ask for some help in kind of helping us with this process as we develop this team. So already this program, this software application, this website, has added value and very specific value that can really gain a lot of traction in how the startup is built and how fast it moves based on by picking the right person to join your team. So that is one of the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about tonight is don't make it hard on yourself. Don't go the hard route. Don't recreate the wheel. Look for some of the tools that are out there like Startup Compass, Co-Founders Lab, the Bossy Matchmaking Profile, the DNA Profile, and really get a good understanding of who you are, who your company is supposed to be in terms of business model, and what type of balanced team you're going to need, and then use an excellent tool like this to find that person and then meet them in person, and then really try to find a mentor like Michael or myself or someone that has a lot of experience with this who can really help answer some of those questions, provide insight, and hold you guys accountable for making the right decision as a company. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and do a little bit of Q&A, and I'm going to open the floor up, and let's get started with some Q&A.
Just the FYI, I got your emails.
I'm sorry. Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Hey, Joel, do you have any experience with co-founder dating as opposed to co-founder lab? I know they're a different organization with a slightly different twist. Just wondering if you've had any experience with them.
I do. I did a co-founder dating session last year. The premise that I felt is that it was a rushed job. I felt very compelled to have to make a decision very quickly, and there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for follow-up or due diligence. And when I get to after this section, Michael, it's an excellent question. The due diligence aspect, this tool and some of these other tools that I've shown you is your due diligence for finding a co-founder, which is more important than due diligence for finding an investment or an investor. Your co-founder is going to be one of the most important people that you pick and put on your team, and they're going to have everything to do from the way you build your company, how successful or how quick you become successful, whether or not you're even able to get an investment based on the teammate. So the due diligence involved, I didn't feel was very thorough with co-founder dating. It was more like an event, I guess, and less focused on the due diligence aspect of truly matching personalities, skill sets, and really looking at that archetype of a profile, looking for the right type of builder or opportunist or innovator or the S. I keep forgetting the S. Specialist.
Great. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Hey, I've got a question. Joel, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so my name's Jesse, and I see a lot written and in some of the accelerator programs about the emphasis of having a technical co-founder. And I was curious what your thoughts are on having a technical co-founder on your team versus essentially having a firm or a third party do a lot of your technical work. Either entirely on the technical side or having them do a lot of the technical work before you get that technical co-founder?
Excellent question. And I'm gonna put the second part of the answer over to Michael in a minute, but I'll use some general data. So I've got about 75 case studies that I've looked at companies that I've been involved in or helped out in the last, I'd say, 5 or 7 years. And they vary on either side of that paradigm. Some of them had technical co-founders from the beginning or brought them on. And some of them, like you were mentioning, hired an outside firm to actually develop the MVP. I'm going to use 2 very specific case examples right now that are very close to me because I'm mentoring the entrepreneurs. Both of them have actually gone out and given some equity away, a revenue share agreement, and close to $100,000 to firms to build their MVPs. We've been building MVPs for quite some time. Our average MVP cost is between $80,000 and $120,000 to get to market. That is a minimal viable product. That is not a later stage product, and then that is not a prototype. That is something that actually is generating revenue, has customers, and is scalable. So if you have $80,000 to $120,000, you're an experienced entrepreneur, you have excellent operational skills, defining requirements to defining user and customer journey, defining automation between marketing and, let's say, web and analytics, and you really can trust a firm to do that, and you're willing to pay for it, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it. A lot of early-stage entrepreneurs, and I'd say the majority of early-stage entrepreneurs, don't come out of the gate being fully funded. They're bootstrapping it. And in the bootstrap mentality, you're going to spend the majority of your money on your MVP. Now, if you hire an outside firm who has no accountability and they have no skin in the game, it's very difficult for you to hold them accountable for the results of what they provide you. A lot of startups will go out and hire a web design agency or a software development firm to develop their website and the first version of their application. They'll spend 30 to 70% more than they expected to. They won't actually have a true MVP that's generating revenue or even able to generate revenue. And they still have to, they find out at some point that they have to continue to invest in this product with this company who now has this exclusive contract to continue to develop the product. So having a technical co-founder definitely can release you from some of those issues, because now you can actually have someone that is on your team, that is a partner, so to say, in your organization and has a lot of skin in the game. And if something is not working out, it's much easier, I think, to fire a technical co-founder than it is a company, because a company more than likely has already been paid. And you weren't able really just to do sweat equity and maybe a low compensation package. Another company I'm working for hired a technical co-founder and an outside firm. They gave the technical co-founder a reduced compensation package with an equity play at it. And they also gave the company that developed the product, and they spent about $750,000 on their MVP. They also gave this company not only $750,000, but they also gave them some equity. Now they're a year and a half into it. They are unfundable. They have been to more than a dozen venture firms from here to San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Boulder, New York, etc. And they cannot get a term sheet. One of the reasons is because of the way their cap sheet is built and the way their co-founders are built in, that they gave a little bit too much money to a technical co-founder and then another sub-technical co-founder who's more like a co-founding employee, as well as this outside firm that owned a little bit too much of the equity that any venture firm was willing to really invest in. So both of these companies have over $100,000 in cash into their product in an outside firm and are about to go out of business and can't hold anybody accountable for that except for themselves. So not hiring a technical co-founder in a tech company is something I would never, ever suggest unless you've done this before, you have a very precise plan, you know how to build a virtual architecture on requirements alone, you know how to manage teams that are either onshore or offshore, and you have a lot of software development management or project management ability yourself to where you can keep a very close eye on your MVP, where it's at, whether or not it's actually revenue generating, and what needs to be done without relying on an outside party to tell you those things. On a business that doesn't rely so heavily on core software or core technology, I think it's completely okay to hire a specialist firm to maybe develop that MVP. Something that maybe is a website or maybe a simple application, but your product might be a physical product. It might be a piece of hardware. It might be a biomechanical device or biomedical device. Then I think it's completely okay to hire an outside firm, but you're going to have that industry either design or technical capability yourself, or someone very close by that you trust that can help manage that process for you to reduce the amount of risk involved with getting a fully functioning revenue-generating MVP.
Okay, that's helpful feedback. And I don't know, this is along the same lines, and I don't know if this would be outside of your expertise, but have you seen any situations where somebody uses a third party in lieu of a technical co-founder, and then when that technical co-founder comes in, assumes all of the code and everything that has been written by that third party, and has that been complicated?
That's another great question, Jesse. So to segue real quick, Co-Founders Lab, on their resources section, has a technical co-founder as a service option. They call it CTO as a service. In full disclosure, Redwood Agile is actually a technical co-founder as a service exclusive partner. And what that means is we actually fill that use case. We will play the technical co-founder for a reasonable amount of time for a number of options for a company that doesn't want to hire a full-time or has not been able to bring in a full-time technical co-founder. We also add as a part of that service, and really this is how we reduce the risk for the entrepreneur, is we actually help bring in that technical co-founder. So not only are we taking the responsibility as a technical co-founder and bringing the accountability and putting the skin in the game, we're also taking the responsibility of helping you find that match made in heaven, and then we're bringing them into the process, and then when everything is kosher and everybody agrees and everybody's getting along, then we transition that technical co-founding relationship over to that new person who has by then taken over the code, have taken over they understand the process because they've actually been involved in the process. They might have been, quote unquote, a lead engineer, a lead developer, a lead designer for the last 3 to 6 months, but now they're transitioning from lead to technical co-founder. And so they've been involved with the build out, they've been involved with the methodology, they've been involved kind of with the communication and the culture, the culture driving that the founder has done, and we've kind of built that relationship over time and then handed it over to that team, and then we back out, and then we just become a trusted vendor or provider that if you need anything moving forward, now that technical co-founder can call on that service organization, or in this case us, and say, hey, we need some extra horsepower, we need to hire another developer or engineer. We already understand each other's personalities, we understand each other's processes, etc. So that is one way that it can be done. There's very few organizations that I'm aware of, and I'm sure they're out there. There's a couple that are investment-based out on the West Coast that do something similar. But in our case, it's a hedge bet. We only do a couple of these a year, and we of course, are very careful about who we do it for because we put a lot of skin in the game to make that relationship happen. And so when I would suggest to you that can it be done, yes, and it should be done over time. It shouldn't be, you should have access to that company who developed that code for a period of time so they can help answer questions, provide documentation, and maybe even fix some things along the way as that new technical co-founder takes over that role.
Hey, this is Jeremy. Do you guys provide like a technical project manager? So, and Sushi actually gave me the name of a website that does, or a company that does something similar to that, where I want to hire a third party, maybe offshore company or something, somebody through an ELAN, and I just need just a project manager just to kind of, who knows the code, not necessarily doing the work, but maybe just to kind of check and vent the code and make sure they're on task and help with the requirements to make sure it makes sense for the developers itself. So I'm not sure if you guys do that or if you guys have a service.
Well, I mean, that can be done, and we haven't specifically done that, but, one of the ways that our model works is because we have access to, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people. So we're able to kind of effectively manage that transition and manage that communication to an outside or a third party. So I think in some cases, if I don't know of any organizations that actually provide that specifically as a service. I mean, I would probably recommend even, using like a co-founders lab or some other type of service to find somebody and just set your expectations up front that I'm looking for, let's say, a very technical, agile Scrum Master or project manager who understands, some fundamental underlying technology, but knows how to manage a project. And I only want to work with you, and I want you to work with, let's say, an offshore partner or another freelance resource. I don't have the time, or I really don't have the skill set to manage that person, and you do, and our relationship is going to be contractual, let's say. So for the next 3 months, you're going to be responsible for this project. So I think, without knowing of what firm that you could turn to that offers a very specific service, we certainly can help do that, and it would probably be finding that it would be an actual person that we would help find that can fulfill that role for you. And then we maybe even help find a vendor or a service provider that meets your budget requirements, and then you can work with that temporary contract person to play the quote-unquote technical co-founder role, but really put the brunt of the engineering work, let's say, on an offshore resource that's saving you quite a bit of money. And I'm going to say one quick thing about that. Popularity or not, I don't care. Hiring an offshore resource or an offshore company to develop your MVP is very risky, sketchy work to be done, and I can't remember the last time I saw a product that met all of its goals on time, on budget, got to market, raised money, made a lot of money, and was built that way. Usually it comes with a lot more headache and a lot more cost than people realize, and it's a great kind of supplement to maintenance or building out additional features or augmenting your existing team. So if you've got a 3 or 4 person team and a really good, strong developer, you might be able to augment their skills with an offshore resource, but you don't really want to put the onus or the entire MVP project into an offshore resource where you have no accountability built in and really very limited visibility into the end result.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll agree with Joel on that. If you are not technically sound, do not outsource, because they will try to play all kinds. I'm very technically sound because I'm a programmer and I manage projects at USF. So I've managed some projects, and they do try to be shady and tell you, 10 hours when it should take like half an hour.
So for the next step, if I want to get somebody a little bit more technical as I move forward, maybe try to find that technical partner to join. I already have a revenue-making site, but I want to add to it. So that would be, I'm just having trouble trying to figure out what my next step should be, and getting somebody either as a technical project manager or, and that's kind of the phase I'm personally at.
Yeah, and to answer your personal situation, I work with an offshore partner that is very trustworthy and very professional, very affordable, and knows how to not only manage a project, but they communicate with a lot of non-tech savvy entrepreneurs and consultants. So they understand that paradigm and how to be successful, and that's one of the reasons we work with them. And that's a good example. Another, as I got on the screen now, is that what I was talking about earlier is kind of the rent-a-CTO service. I'd kind of relate at a higher level, I think, Jeremy, than what you were saying, that I have a temporary need, but it's immediate. And I need someone with extremely technical and very high-level and low-level project management abilities. I need technical guidance. I need some architecture done. I need some requirements defined. And then I need a project managed for, let's say, a period of time. Even Co-Founders Lab can offer the rent-a-CTO option and find you who that best person is. They obviously have a very large network. Their rent-a-CTO service is with trusted partners only that have to go through a process and have accountability built in. And these are going to be qualified, seasoned consultants, professional technical advisement, and that'll kind of relieve you, Jeremy, from having to take over that role for a while and not put your trust into a complete third entity and really have an actual one person. In the corporate world, I used to hear the word throat to choke all the time, and really all that means is accountability. Finding that person who has the accountability in place that you can develop a relationship with, you can kind of funnel your vision, and they can funnel the requirements, and they can manage the project. That It'd kind of be like a rent-a-CTO or even finding a project manager somewhere that you put on contract, or you really search for the best offshore partner that's going to meet your rates.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add one small
Hey,
little
Joel,
thing.
this is Jeff Zeba.
Real quick, Jeff, you
Go ahead,
would mind, Bobby, if you can. Thanks.
Okay. What I was just going to say is I've had the opportunity not only to have my own programmers write code for me. When I kind of restarted the company again about 3 years ago, I decided to really work with some offshore gaming programmers. I wanted to get some really young, creative people. And, I started with pretty green behind the ears 2 individual programmers. And it's taken about 3 years, truly, to get them to the level of where I believe that they are today. That's still not even at the level that I've had in the past. But it's a 4 a.m. every day for 7 days a week kind of a program to work with them. There's a lot of time, change, obviously. A lot of work that has to go into a relationship like that to build up a trust between the two of you. And contractual agreements. Again, you can't do anything but see each other over Skype. So you have no idea what they're doing on the other side. So I've had a positive piece as a result of working with these 2 gentlemen in a different country. But on the other side, I probably could have reduced that 3 years down to a year and a half because you almost have to spoon feed a lot of these types of individuals. They don't really know how to think outside the box. They don't really understand, if they get in a piece of code and they find something that needs to be fixed, well, if you didn't tell them to fix it, they'll leave it be until you tell them to find it to fix it. So there's a lot of relationship building, a lot of work that has to be done to it. So overall, did I say? Probably not. I probably could have gotten the same work done by someone in U.S. And I'm still looking at considering that kind of a situation. But it's been really interesting learning capability for me, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. It's been really a terrific opportunity for me.
And Bobby, to say that, that's definitely, I commend you for taking that. And you found out what most people that do this for, a living and manage offshore kind of development practices for a living, it is an investment of time, it is an investment of personality, and it's a complete learning experience to work with an offshore resource. And I think in the last few years with websites like Elance and Odesk and some of these, Craigslist, et cetera, really allowing offshore partners and offshore resources to market their services here in the U.S. And of course, the rates are much better than most people in the U.S. that it's taken off. And what a lot of people find out is that the investment is actually twice as much from your side as it is from their side. It's not just reduced money, it's increased time that you're going to have to spend. If you've never done it before, it's a very different way of doing business, and what you soon find out is it's really a matter of training, it's a matter of communication, it's a matter of culture, and once you really understand those kind of 3 paradigms, you can really communicate effectively, you can speak to their culture, and you can develop a relationship that's mutually beneficial, and you reduce not only your time but your costs, but that takes a big time investment up front. And people that haven't done offshore development before, really, even developed programs with offshore partners before, get into hot water very quickly because they soon realize that, oh, it's, they don't think out of the box, or they don't develop as high quality, or they don't follow instructions. And really what it comes down to is clear definition comes from clear thinking, and very seldom are we really thinking very clearly about what we really want them to accomplish for us. Because they're not there to think for us. They're there to really respond to our very specific requests. And the better we can define, the better that output's going to be. But that takes a lot of skill honing in. So thanks for that, Bobby.
Yeah,
Jeff, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I just had a question for you. It seems like the ultimate goal is to find a technical co-founder that has enough experience to create a great product, but not so much experience that somebody like myself, who's at the beginning stages of an idea, that somehow I can compensate them either with equity or money, some sort of compensation that has an interest in the area that I want to go into with, that's a free agent as well, so not tied to, it doesn't have too much time tied to other projects. And Co-Founders Lab, I've looked on there a decent amount, and it's been a good resource, certainly. And it just seems like it's so difficult right now to find a technical co-founder that, they can pretty much name their price, and you're at the mercy of a technical co-founder sort of only by the fact that you don't have one. And if you really need one, you've got to give up a lot to get it. Am I incorrect in feeling that way? I mean, is it easier than I think to find a technical co-founder, or is it pretty tough?
It's pretty tough. And I'd say right now, we're seeing the biggest entrepreneurial boom I think the world has ever seen. We've got more than 1 million new businesses being created in the U.S. alone every month. And we have more people out of work than we've ever had out of work, especially in technical fields. And a lot of those people that have been freelancing for years all of a sudden see an opportunity, and it is an opportunity to see all these new businesses being created. And a lot of these businesses need websites and applications built. And when we really start being, I think, serious about it, this group here is way more serious than a lot of entrepreneurs are about their ideas. We're really doing something about it. And I think that it is hard work, Jeff, and it definitely takes a lot of attention and time to really find who that person is. But it is difficult. I'd say it's probably pretty difficult right now compared to even recent years because of the surplus of new businesses. So that increases competition for high value and very talented professionals. But it also brings a lot of people that maybe don't have the skills, but are saying I'm a technical co-founder, and I've been in the corporate world my entire life, and I can build software. That sounds great, and the majority of those people probably had that project manager that Jeremy was talking about, or that lead person that really helps devise and define the way the team was managed and the processes that the team were made to be effective. They just kind of followed direction, and now all of a sudden being put into a position of leadership and having to define an architecture and define the way the business is going to make money through technology is a very tough job. But I would say that Co-Founders Lab, I think, makes it easier, and I think you have the response that a lot of people do, that there's just so many people, and I just haven't been able to find somebody. And I would say, have you spent 2 weeks straight in Co-Founders Lab talking to people? Have you asked for phone numbers? Have you called them? Have you said, I want to see your bossy profile? Have you really bared down and said, I'm not going to do anything until I know for a fact that I'm not going to find someone here? Because I'd venture out of the 10,000 plus people that are in Co-Founders Lab, there's got to be somebody in there that has the skills, that kind of has the archetype that you're looking for, that has some of the background that you're looking for, but it is a matter of finding a needle in a haystack. And so it's difficult because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of new businesses, there's a lot of competition, but it certainly can be done.
Hey, Joel, to take a different angle to this, this is kind of to Jeff's point, I see it a little bit as a chicken and the egg problem, where you want a good technical co-founder, and that good technical co-founder will only go to somebody who has something good for them. And I think maybe sometimes a technical co-founder wants to see some type of traction or progress, and you might not be able to get that until you have a good technical co-founder to help you create it. So what about taking the approach of hiring a designer, not as a co-founder, but just for a fee, in which they'll basically draw the blueprints for the website or whatever it is that you're trying to build, and to go through all the steps that you need to envision that site without actually pounding the nails and putting up the roof and everything, and then going to the co-founders and say, look, here's the game plan that I have, and it's all laid out. Now would you have more interest in jumping in with me? And would that help you get a better co-founder or even a co-founder?
Implicitly and explicitly, yes. When co-founders brings a lot of people to us and the ones that they actually don't send us anybody that does not have a fully working prototype. And that prototype can be in any number of forms, but that process and that output that you just explained is an absolute requirement to even create that co-founder relationship with a truly professional technical person. Because, like you said, the truly proficient technical co-founders want to see that you've put something into this, and that, if I'm going to leave a job, or if I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to start doing this new thing with you, that you've already defined it as much as possible, and that you can quickly communicate with me the goals and objectives of what this application or software or company is supposed to do. And the best way to do that really is to go through the design process and hire a good designer who understands product strategy and understands how to build a simple but working prototype. There you can visually communicate what that product needs to be. And oftentimes, a technical co-founder can even help in that process, because I don't want to say that the best technical co-founders are some of the worst co-founders, because I think the worst co-founders are the people that say, hey, when you're making $1 million, let me know. Because by then I've already probably, said a few, superlatives, not real happy with the attitude, and tell them to go F off and, have a nice day, but thanks anyways, good luck in all your endeavors. And I'll go find someone that is willing really to get down and dirty and share that vision with me. And I think that's really, I think it's up to you as whether you want that person to really share in that vision, because I think some technical people have, a lot of technical, even engineers are very creative people, and if you give them the latitude, they will definitely help bring vision that you never would have thought of. And so, a good design firm is actually going to help you do that same thing. So it's a great intermediary step. I think it's definitely a good step in the right direction, and can even help communicate a lot of different things. You'll get some screens for a pitch deck if you need to raise some money. It'll help you bring in co-founders. It'll help maybe bring in some new partners, business partners that can maybe help grow your organization, or maybe lend you some type of service or technology that you need. So I think a prototype at a minimum is something as a founder you need to have a good idea of. And if you're willing to go out and spend the $15,000, $20,000 to get a really good prototype in place, to where you're going to find that long-term technical visionary and the best solid partners and a good growth strategy in place, I think that's a great idea, Jeremy.
And where that would obviously fall
Jesse.
outside of, that would fall outside of the co-founders lab. So that would kind of be the step before. One site that I've seen is called Sortfolio, which is just basically a list of a bunch of web designers. Do you have any other thoughts of places to look for kind of that step before the co-founder lab?
I would say, I have biweekly sessions with the CEO and the product manager at Co-Founders Lab, and had a lot of input to the resources section, which you see on your screen now. And in the section right above Rent a CTO and Build Your First Version Working Product, both of which are going to require some type of technical service, you'll see two things. The startup roadmap, which is really understanding the process and the vision, and really starting to build your network around, hey, I need to get some support around this idea. But conceptualizing your product with the wireframe and prototype, they can help match either, they have many design partners that actually will help iterate through wireframe and prototype development. You can go online and create your own prototypes and wireframes. If you clicked on Learn More on their resource page right now, you'll see it comes up to ProtoShare. And Jesse, you can log into ProtoShare and fill out that, go through that process and really build a working prototype with very little technical ability. And then you can turn right around and start showing that as an example when you're developing a relationship with a new possible technical co-founder. You can start to share, your new prototype with them, which gives them a very good idea that you've thought through this, you've got some skin in the game, you've got a really good idea of what you want to build, and now you're looking for someone who can really build it. And I think it's going to really invoke, I think, their vision as well. Is going to be like, oh man, look what I would do with this. It's like, I love what you've done here, Jesse, but wait till I get a hold of this. And those are really some of the people you're looking for. To be honest, since my relationship with Co-Founders Lab started last year, I really don't look for co-founders anywhere else. We do co-founder matching with companies, I'd say, every month. And we use Co-Founders Lab as a forum and as a resource for all of it. And the reason is just because it's easy, it's trusted. I can answer the majority of the questions pretty quickly about, well, you guys don't have a prototype. Well, here's a good resource. We can build you a prototype. It's going to cost you more, but it's going to be top-notch. And if you're going to, hire a top-notch co-founder or an investor or something, I would suggest that. But if you really just need, to try to communicate your ideas, ProtoShare is a great option. Go to Co-Founders Lab and click on the resource page. A lot of other, I think, websites offer very similar services in a very different way. And I can't even think of all of them right now, but they're everywhere. You can crowdsource it. You can find a number of basic themes, like in the theme forest, that gives you maybe some idea, and you can play around with it if you're a little bit technical. You can use a ProtoShare, or you can use PowerPoint. We went through with a company that raised $3 million in their idea stage and had just built their team. They pulled someone from AOL, someone from the government, and someone from Silicon Valley, and they built a prototype in PowerPoint, and it was 43 screens in PowerPoint, but they put a lot of time into it, and it really showed that they were thinking very clearly about what they were building, and we obviously like that a lot, because that's what we look for. We look for people that have a lot of skin in the game and are willing to put skin in the game and move forward and are okay with moving at warp speed. So as an example, the tools are out there. It's really about that communication and knowing what to look for and asking the right questions. And if you're hearing, especially from Co-Founders Lab, if you're hearing from the people that you're communicating with, if you're sending messages and you're having phone calls or Skype messages with potential co-founders that are technical and they're holding you hostage, either with requirements like, no, I want 50% of the company, and you're like, I don't want to give you 50%, then you just need to immediately move on. Say, I told you that, here's what I have to offer. This is what I'm willing to give you right now. And then if we maybe build an MVP, or maybe we raise some money, or maybe we start making some dollars with our MVP, we can start to talk about a different compensation package. But really stick to your guns, know what you're looking for, know what questions to ask, and again, stick to your guns, because you don't want to get taken advantage of. I'm not going to say that the majority of people are going to try to do that, but we all know those people are out there, and that's the best way to avoid them, is don't let them negotiate. You're the one in the negotiating seat. Don't let them hold you hostage. The resources are there. You guys are on a telephone call right now with Mike O'Donnell. He's a plethora of resources. He's a great guy. So even just picking up the phone and calling someone like Mike just to say, hey, what do you think about this situation? Having those advisors around and those mentors can help you navigate through some of those really tough challenges.
Yeah, and before we have another question, let me just add that we're going to be spending a whole session on MVP. And product development and best practices and tools like ProtoShare and Balsamic, and we're gonna hit that aspect. So let's really try to focus on: do you need a co-founder, or can you outsource it? So let's rather than talking about product development, let's really focus on a co-founder, which may not even be a technical co-founder, right? Or even in building teams. So I just want to redirect the conversation back to that and not get too far afield into design and product development at this session. Sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I just had a question about your experience, Joel, with companies that may have found someone through the Co-Founders Lab that may not be in Florida. Can you talk a little bit about establishing C-level positions with someone outside this area? How's that for fundraising, raising money? How's that for the business? Any experience that you've had, positive or negative, with that?
Nothing negative just yet. I can give you, we helped match a company in LA. We had a co-founder or a founder that was in LA, and he was pretty much he's a business co-founder. He was from the music industry. He had a brilliant idea. Didn't really have the money to pay us to build it. So what we did is we went on a matchmaking hunt, and we used Co-Founders Lab, and lucky for us, the Shahab Kaviani from Co-Founders Lab was in LA a few weeks after we had started this strategy, and so he was able to meet at a huge meetup group out in LA, and Shahab actually helped to match a co-founder, and now they're a team of 3 people building a product. Another one was we actually went into a joint venture late last year with a company in Boulder, but we were down a technical co-founder. We had a great marketing person, we had a great business person, and we had a good technical engineer, but we didn't really have a good CTO level architect. And so we just reached out to the Boulder Co-Founders Lab community, and we pulled someone from another company that was in the same industry, and now that company is doing very well. They have lots of customers. They signed on, Salesforce.com as a customer. Their product is amazing. We use their product. It was a joint venture, technology venture, and we found a lot of success. It took us 2 weeks to close the deal with that tech. This person was just phenomenal. That was one of the better case studies two of the better case studies that we've had. But we have people up in Philadelphia. We have a company up there. He was a primary founder. He was a technical person, but they're not building a software product. They're actually building a co-work type facility. And we use Co-Founders Lab to go out and find him a business developer, someone who had a lot of connections and network in Philadelphia that can help them build kind of the business plan and the support in the local area to build this new co-working facility. And they use Co-Founder Lab to kind of match this person out and find this person that had an excellent sales background, had a lot of contacts in the area, and help establish some brand recognition for their new co-work facility. So I think, the tool itself, and the reason I wanted to talk a lot about Co-Founders Lab tonight is out of all of the tools that are available to us as entrepreneurs, from matchmaking and really finding the right person, this just helps our due diligence process. It can't do it for us, but it gives us access to one of the largest open networks of founders in the world. And it's a lot easier just to say, hey, listen, if you're in Co-Founders Lab, chances are we can communicate in the same vernacular, because I'm in Co-Founders Lab. I've been through the resources section, so I understand some things that I can take use of, but I really need to have someone. You guys can talk about some of the same things. So it really starts to slim down, I think, the opportunity for failure. It really helps reduce the risk of the due diligence process, because finding a co-founder, and I'm going to segue real quick, finding a co-founder can be one of the most stressful parts of building your company. Learning all of the management skills and how to build a product, and the idea phase, and how to put things on paper, and how to be flexible, and what lean startup really is all about. None of it really focuses a lot on that team formation aspect, and it's really so pivotal. It can make or break you. I had an investor meeting late last year, and I had a comment that was very discouraging, which was, I love your background, I love your team, I love your product, I love where you guys are going, but I really have a lot of question about some of your team. There's some weaknesses, and I have to look back at you because you built the team, and you should have known better. And so, finding out, a year and a half into building a company, that you have a team problem from someone else, and that someone could be a partner, it could be a new employee, it could be a potential investor, it could be customers, is not something really that you want to look forward to, because then in turn you're now faced with a very tough discussion, and that is, what do I do with this situation? Do I move them around? Do I fire them? Do I just forget finding a co-founder? I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to use a temporary service, or I'm going to find a software company that's going to build my product, and that's what they do for a living. So they specialize in building MVPs, and there are companies out there that specialize in building MVPs. They understand who you are as an entrepreneur. They understand your vulnerability, and they're not there to take advantage of it. And they got to where they were by being very professional about it, and always look for credentials. Credibility indicators are very important when picking not just a person, but also obviously a service company. And so oftentimes, finding a co-founder, I'm not going to say is going to make or break you, but it's either going to move you along faster or slower. It's going to either help you raise money or not. It's either going to help you build your product faster and more successful or not. It's going to help reduce the stress in your life or not. And so there's a lot of things that really go back to who you're building this company with. And I think, the opportunity that Founders Institute and Mike is giving you right now, especially at this point, is to really start to think very, very diligently about who that co-founder is going to be. And if you've ever been in a long-term relationship, or if you've ever been married, that's another very long-term kind of process that you're going to do a lot of quote-unquote due diligence. You're going to get to know them. You're going to maybe live together. You're going to maybe get engaged for a period of time. You're going to maybe trial out different circumstances like travel with this new person, because ultimately if you're going to spend a long period of time and share finances and share housing and et cetera, there's a lot of trust and there's a lot of relationship and communication building that has to go on. And a co-founder is really no different. You know, it's a very intimate relationship. So if there's any more questions, I'm going to, you know, I heard Mike say earlier that we're going to talk about hiring and firing co-founders. So I can segue into the firing aspect real quick if we don't have any more questions, but I'll sit back here for a second.
I think Joe, we got about 10 minutes, and we can go over time though. This group doesn't mind, but I would say I would like to talk about that aspect of it because finding a co-founder that is the wrong co-founder will exponentially increase your problems, your stress, and may tank your venture. So everyone talks about finding a co-founder and all the things you got to do to find a co-founder, and everybody gets so freaked out about finding a co-founder. But finding the wrong one is actually worse than finding no co-founder, and I can tell you from personal experience. So that's a segue. Let's talk about that aspect of getting out of a co-founder or partner relationship that's not working. And let's also talk about just hiring and firing contractors or employees from that point on. So, Joel, back to you.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. So I'm going to cover the first part. I just Googled something real simple, and you guys can, you know, more than welcome to Google this on your own time or even right now, and look at the amount of resources that come up for firing a co-founder. Most of you as new entrepreneurs and have never been through the process that Mike and I have been through of actually having to fire a co-founder before, never even think of this. And so really it's one of those things you don't even know exist, because when you think of co-founder, you think of a match made in heaven. You think of a business partner. You think of a flourishing relationship that is never going to end unless the business goes under. And even if it does, we're going to be the best friends ever. And what you realize if you do Google how to fire a co-founder, that some of the biggest media publications, some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world are writing about it, that they are trying to figure out better ways to approach it, that they are sharing their stories, their war stories of what to avoid in the process of finding a co-founder, because it is the worst thing you will have to do. I have been divorced and I've had to fire co-founders before, and they are equally as difficult to deal with. They are as equally to come to terms with as one another. And I would say the co-founder aspect is even worse, because a business that is continuing to grow and flourish and gain customers and traction and build brand equity is even worse because it's out in the spotlight. There are customers and partners and the public is looking at you. And when you go through the process internally of having to go through firing a co-founder, it can be extremely bumpy and messy, and it can really just stress you out. It can remove your thoughts and kind of your focus from running the company that is doing well, and it can very well break you if you don't deal with it fast enough. So I'll share a quick story as I go through, and I'm just going to keep going through Google on how to fire a co-founder, what it means. There's a lot of stuff about the importance of the right co-founder. And I'd say the most important part about finding a co-founder is making sure you don't have to fire them. Firing a co-founder is worse than firing an employee. It's worse than firing a contractor. It's worse than getting fired. It is extremely emotionally draining. This is someone, especially if you started out with someone you knew, or maybe a friend of yours that you know, like I said in the beginning, a lot of us go out and maybe find a friend or someone that we're used to, and we start a company. And then what we find out is that that person has no business being in a startup company, let alone your startup company. And yet now they share equal with you, or very near equal, which means it's even that much more difficult to get them out of the picture. All the while that you may not be able to make the right decisions. You may not be able to really move fast enough because you're too consumed with what to do about this problem. So I went through this recently. A friend of mine, a good acquaintance, we became friends. We started a company. And over time, what I realized is that it was the wrong person to start a company with. And a lot of the decisions that I had to be making were not being made because I was too worried about my co-founder, because I was too worried about the things that I knew weren't happening when they should have been happening. when I knew that the skill set really wasn't there, but I really wanted to believe that it could be there. And so what I started to do over, I'd say, the course of about 10 months is I decided to go on a number of tracks of mentoring, of changing delegation, and of changing roles and responsibilities. And what I found out after about 10 months is, being a roles and responsibility guru, I would say, that I know that every project that begins without clear, defined roles and responsibilities is going to have problems at some point. That with a co-founder, roles and responsibilities can change. It's the nature of the relationship, and it's the nature of kind of the environment that a startup is in, as its infancy. Things change a lot. So one co-founder might be very heavy in business development for a while, and then move over to technical, and then maybe move over to product or marketing. That's completely okay, and with that, roles and responsibilities are going to change. But I think the underlying roles and responsibility of who is the visionary founder, who is really setting the tone of the culture, who is really delegating what the other co-founders can be contributing or should be contributing, that person is a pivotal role in the organization, but so is that second or third person that was brought on. And so finding out that one of those people does not fit the culture, it does not fit any roles and responsibilities, no matter how many of them you make up just to try to deal or band-aid the problem, no matter how many mini projects you reduce them to and give them to see if they can succeed, no matter how many hours and hours of days, of months that you invest in mentoring, in the books, in the seminars, in the training you send them to, none of it can compensate with the fact that the entire time, for 10 months, you knew the answer, that you have to fire your co-founder. And I think what a lot of us do is we try to avoid that very uncomfortable, very difficult situation, when in fact it's as easy as going to sit down with your attorney, understanding any intellectual property rights, understanding your legal obligation in the relationship, understanding the vesting schedule that was laid out in the beginning, and understanding your operating agreement. And that all stems from that first collaborators agreement that you two signed at the beginning, or 3 signed, or 4 signed, and what it matured into. And let your attorney give you some very good advice of what to do next. And not, look at an attorney as someone who can give you sound advice like a therapist without getting emotionally involved. Even advisors, even having a good small group of advisors, whether it's 4 or 6 advisors, being honest with them about what's happening is absolutely pivotal. And even if they give you advice on what to do, their job is not to tell you what to do. Their job is not to lay out very specific steps of how to cover your company and how to cover your own position and how to cover them and make sure that you still do right by them but do what's right for the company. An attorney can help you actually lay all of these things out in order of what to focus on, how to approach it, the type of deal or documentation that you want to offer them on their parting. And obviously you want to make sure that whatever you offer them, they're going to say yes for. One of the things that we see in movies is I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And that is by far what you have to offer a co-founder when you realize it's the wrong co-founder and now you have to let them go. Even if they own 50, 51, 49, 30% of your company, and it's your company, it's your brain, it's your ideas, it's your vision, it's your culture, there are ways out of it. And a good attorney is going to be able to lay out step by step the best possible course of action for you to take. And so I definitely would recommend, if that ever happens to any of you, make sure you have a good attorney, make sure you have a good relationship, and that you're open to making that decision. But first and foremost, make the decision. Don't wait 10 months. Don't try to do everything you can to avoid it. It's just like an employee or a contractor that is not performing, except for the fact that you've given them more power and more control to not perform. And that is detrimental to an organization that is an idea or growth phase that is trying to overcome so much obstacle and so much challenge every single day. You cannot afford not to fire a co-founder if for some reason you felt like this is not going to work out. Trust your intuition, do your homework, make sure that you have proven the fact that this co-founder is not going to work out, gather as much data and analytics as you can to make sure you're satisfied. Bring that to your attorney and say, this is how I know, how do I come about this? They're going to be able to say to you one of two things. Well, based on performance or based on the agreement in the beginning, based on the vesting schedule, I think you should offer them X. And then you can go from there and start to define the way that relationship is going to have to break off, and then you just do it. I spent a lot of time with advisors, and I spent a lot of time with mentors trying to figure out how to avoid firing a co-founder. And it wasn't a personal decision. You know, we're still friends today, but it was absolutely a pivotal business decision. And it's so hard that if you don't make that decision right away, it's probably going to eat away at your gut every single day. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, it's going to boil into your conversations. It's going to cloud your clear thinking, which is going to cloud your clear judgment. And it's going to allow you, I think, to focus on the wrong things when you should be focused on how is this co-founder supposed to be helping me. You're too worried about how is this co-founder hurting me. So the sooner you can cut that relationship off, and do it, of course, in a character-driven way, make sure that that co-founder, if they've invested time and even money, that you found an equitable way to release them from the organization, whether that's through a long-term profit-sharing agreement that maybe pays them for the next 3 years, or whether it's a new vesting schedule, but it removes them from any operational or managing director control in the organization, or maybe you downgrade them to an employee because they're really great at developing, but they're a horrible technical co-founder because they failed so many times at projects. And so I think all of those are perfect examples of what you could do, but the worst thing to have to do is fire them and get them out of the organization and get them out of the paperwork, and of course, and it's damage control, because it's a legal matter. An operating agreement is not a legal document, but if you filed with the state of Florida or Nevada or any of the other Wyoming or Delaware, and they're on the paper, they're on the Articles of Incorporation, and especially if you've gotten some funding, you now have a sticky situation, and you need to make sure that you do it in the most equitable and of course the best course of action is to be charitable in how you do it without being overly charitable, but make sure you do it very quickly. Get the advice of any investors that you have in your company. Investors sometimes are going to want you to change co-founders if you've made a really bad choice, and they're willing to make an investment in your company, but they want you to change out teams. They might be able to offer some help in that area, but more than likely it's going to be on your shoulders, and you're going to have to take care of that on your own. Any questions? So I can see on my screen right now how to avoid mediocre co-founders. And I think that's how we get into a position of having to fire co-founders, is we kind of settle in the beginning on mediocrity. We find either someone we're comfortable with or we didn't do enough due diligence, and what we end up with is really a problem much larger than it ever had to be. Sometimes companies don't have proper documentation in place, and that can lead to bad co-founders situations, at least in relationships, to where at some point maybe it's you're making a lot of money and new salaries are being given out and new equitable distributions are being made, or maybe an investment has come in, and now all of a sudden your co-founder has changed their personality and they've changed their mindset, and now you've got a real problem on your hand, and maybe they did help out to get where you are today. And again, it's making the decision, seeking good legal counsel and good mentorship and good advice, but making that decision as fast as possible and getting it over with and moving on. I can say from personal experience, and I only know 2 other, and including Mike now, I guess 3. I know 2 other personal entrepreneurs who have both been venture funded and had to fire co-founders. And I think their stories are very similar to mine. It was the toughest thing they had to do, but as soon as it was done, things changed. Things were on the up and up. Things started moving in the direction that they thought they were going to, that they were trying to get to. And what they realized is that that weight of not making that decision was actually causing kind of the movement, but not the progress of their startup. As soon as they made that decision, and the 2 people I'm speaking of didn't even replace them right away. They just got rid of them and replaced them with just tactical kind of skill sets with other people, and they took over the role as primary founder. And once that happened, they were able to grow, they were able to make decisions, they were able to go into new markets, and they were able to do it with a clear conscience, and they were able to do it without all the stress in their life, and they were able to focus on the business and spend more time, quality time with their family and with their personal work-life balance, not having that constant digging mosquito in your brain about how do I fire my co-founder, because that will be a question that won't go away until you do it. My own experience has taught me what to do next time if that ever were to happen again. Someone who builds teams, I'd say, for pretty much a living. I do a lot of team building. Picking the wrong co-founder, I knew from day one. I made the decision on my own, so I have to own that decision even today. But the good news is that today I own the fact that I made the right decision in the end, that things have gone very well since that happened. And it wasn't a huge mess of the action of firing. It was delicate. I certainly had to have good legal advice, and I had to make my case very strong, which it was. But the minute it was done, things were focused. Things have improved. More smiles on more people's faces started showing up at the office, so to say, and we're on a very clear path, and we don't have as many distractions. And I really attribute that to making a very difficult decision that took 10 months to make. And so I would say that finding a co-founder is as important, because I think not having to fire a co-founder a year or 2 or 3 years down the road is extremely important. I think once you get to 4 or 5 years and you've grown a little bit, and it's really firing an executive at that point, and keeping someone's founding status in place is not a problem, because a co-founder in an early or an idea stage company has to be about execution. They can't just be some executive that lays out strategy and vision and manages people. They have to actually be getting work done in the trenches. They have to be developing or designing products or managing customers, or developing and implementing product and marketing strategies. So you can't really have, you can't really wait too long, because you need those roles and responsibilities filled. And if that person, quote unquote, owns them because they're a co-founder, but they suck at them, then just get rid of them in that role and responsibility. And if you have to completely fire them out of the organization, go for it. And then either pick it up yourself or find someone else to do it. And you'll be smarter. We all learn things. You're all in this group because you're smarter than the average bear, and that means you guys learn as failure happens. And so willingness to fail, of course, is intuitive to the process of firing a co-founder, because the next time you find a co-founder, you may not replace them with a co-founder. You may replace them maybe with an executive, or maybe with just another resource. Or you say, you know what, screw that. I'm not going to go try to hire someone now for a co-founder. I'm going to go to the co-founders lab, and I'm actually going to take a data-driven approach. I'm going to use the Bossy profile. I'm going to do true due diligence to make sure that this person is the top, most expert-level person, both emotionally, intelligently, fits the Bossy profile. It's exactly what I need. We dated for a while. We get along. We had some really good advisory. We got great documentation, good legal advice. I feel so much better about this than I did last time, and I really think we're going to avoid the problem that I had last time. So don't be afraid to do it. That's, I think, what, as a founder, I've been through. I've heard that from other co-founders or other founders that have been through this process, that it was the fear of letting go, and the fear of not only letting people down, but really the fear of saying, I started this with you and I owe you, I owe you this penance, which is not true. You don't owe them anything. If they're not contributing to the organization in the way they need to, then they're just another employee. And employees have to be happy, and they have to contribute to be a part of the organization, especially in an early stage company. And once you find that right co-founder, I'll move in real quick to employees and contractors are the same. That even the contractors that you hire and work with, the companies and the partners that you decide to work with, if you're responsible for setting the tone of the culture, if you find partners that go completely against the culture of you in your organization, then how do you expect it to be a match made in heaven? And if you interview a candidate that has excellent skills as a contractor, but really their soft skills and maybe some of the cultural aspects of who they are as a person really don't match who you are or who your company is, then just don't hire them. Don't turn it into something where you have to get into a sticky situation of firing a contractor for some ridiculous reason. They do great work, but they're impossible to get, let's say, along with. Especially in the state of Florida these days, firing contractors is a very touchy subject. There's a lot of lawsuits happening. I went through this last year with a contractor who, clearly on paper did not meet requirements, did not fulfill obligations, completely failed in delivery, and yet still sued the company. Luckily, nothing happened at that point because we had excellent documentation, and he clearly did not meet his obligations, and he clearly did breach a contract, and so we were able to prove the fact that we had no case here. But any other time than that, you can't just fire someone for a personality flaw or personality difference. So I'd say in these beginning stages of building a team, If you're not going to find a co-founder and you're going to find a service company, or you're going to find a partner organization, or you're going to find a software company or a contractor to try to fill in some gaps, make sure that you do the same due diligence on them that you would with any other employee. You want to make sure you're comfortable, that they fit the right skills, both soft and hard skills, that you have a good level of communication already set, that the tone is set, that they like your culture, that they really want to be there, and then they're not just looking for a job. We go through a lot of collaborators per year where we hire either people coming out of university or people that are looking to enhance their skills in user experience, interface design, and we'll bring them through a program for 13 weeks. And the reason is because we're trying to build their skills and turn them to a high-performing athlete, so to say, in that field. And if they don't absolutely are begging to get in the door because they definitely want the experience, then I see no reason to bring them on board. They're the ones that are enthusiastic, the ones that are willing to, let's say, work a little bit of overtime or put skin in the game, so to say, the ones that are really, really anxious to get on board because they love your vision, because they love your culture, because they love what you're all about, and your idea is just a pipe dream they want to be a part of, that's a good place to start. And then I would start doing due diligence from there. And anybody that doesn't kind of meet that kind of upfront wow factor, just move on, because having to fire them is very difficult.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Joel, any final comments or any final questions for Joel? And I want to hit a couple of best practices points before we end the evening.
No, guys, thanks for your time.
Any last minute questions for Joel? Anybody?
Thank you, Joe. No questions.
Good job, Joel.
Co-Founders Lab next month, guys. Check it out on Meetup.
Thank you very much, Joel. That was excellent.
And Joel, you're welcome to hang in for the rest if you'd like.